Hey Jesse, how are you?
I'm doing good. Good morning. How are you guys?
We're doing so well. I'm so excited to have you on the show today. We've been connected over social media for quite some time, and I'm a big fan of what you're doing with Handcar. So excited to hear a little more about that journey. But before we get started, I do have an important question that we ask all of our guests, and that is, what is in your glass this afternoon?
I've been waiting for this all month. I am well. It's still morning hours here right now. So I've got in my Ember mug, keeping it hot, which is great. I've got some Madcap Coffee, longtime client of ours, still friends, daily stop of my usual morning make it to the office, and then I'm double fisting water, which is usually my move. But after hours, if we were doing this, usually some type of spicy marg or cocktail of some sort is the move.
Oh my gosh, that is so awesome. And Madcap is actually like the reason that I got into coffee in the first place. I remember I went to school for a couple years at Grand Valley over in Grand Rapids,
Yep.
and the Madcap was born and originated there. And that's the first coffee I ever tried outside of Starbucks. And I like fell in love with, how amazing just like regular local coffee can be. So it's always so sweet to hear when somebody is sipping on that. But Cassie, what do you have?
Yeah, I've heard such great things about that shop. I definitely need to go try it. But this morning I actually have a Recess. It's peach ginger, and Recess is
Nice.
such a great brand. I'm a huge fan, but filled with just amazing adaptogens, which helps me feel calm and collected throughout the day. So that's what I have
That's a
today.
plus.
Yes, yes,
Send one of those over
absolutely.
after this, would you?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Erica, what about you?
I just have some boring coffee this morning. I was going to grab an Olipop because I wanted to make a root beer float with one of their flavors that they sent over, but I didn't grab vanilla ice cream at the store yesterday, so I am out of luck with that. Maybe I'll do that a little bit later.
Maybe later. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Jesse, as Erica said, we're so excited to learn from you today. But before we dive into your tips and tricks and everything you've learned along the way, do you mind sharing us a little bit about your background and how Handcar came to be?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a kind of a weird winding road of getting to Handcar. I was a professional photographer for like 13 years. Started like kind of a really weird journey in that I started super young. So I took on my first clients when I was 16, and I was full time in that by the time I was 17. So working for myself is all I ever did. And it's all I've ever known. And it's that, made things harder in some ways and easier in others. My wife and I have been together that entire span of time too. So I definitely like dodged the bullet of like the unknown of being married and being self-employed. And like, it was kind of just like, that is what our life is. And that's, all of that. Had a couple other businesses along the way, had a photo booth company that I started and was acquired later by a competitor. Had a web design business with a partner, did Airbnbs for a long time. My wife's an interior designer, so we kind of collaborated on that. But photography was kind of always the mainstay in that. But where Handcar came from was a bit of an accident that turned into something now that 4 years later we're still cranking on. But had a client that was a photography client of mine. I was doing some social and content work for a local boutique hotel here in Detroit for a couple of years. I was shooting content or doing campaigns for Chaco Footwear, the sandal brand everybody knows and loves. And client slash friend that was their brand manager at the time kind of came to me and was like, "Hey, this was about 2 or 3 weeks prior to Christmas." Came to me and said, "Hey, I just fired my social guy, and obviously it's the holidays. Um, I you seem like you know what you're doing over there with that hotel. Do you think you could come like save us for a month or two as we like get through the holidays, like, find onboard somebody, all of that?" And my answer was like, "Yeah, on paper, yes, I would be able to step in and do that." I was like, "But I am also one human being. I have a full-time job. That was someone's full-time job. Like, when would you like me? When would you like me to do that?" Basically. Um, and ended up bringing on a good friend of mine to basically like he quit his job, joined me in it, and the idea was just like, "Hey, I don't need this money. This was kind of a surprise gig. Like, it's 3 months worth of work for 6 months worth of money. Do you want to like see if we can turn this into something, basically? And basically, like 3 or 4 weeks into the gig, they just called off the search for an internal person and just said, we're just going to keep the contract with you guys. And it was really just like, again, I was living off of my photography income, but it was a exercise in like, if you put your heads down on one brand, and like, I mean, it was just both of us like spending 40 to 60 hours a week just like living, breathing Chaco. We would like, we'd do all the social strategy during the day, and then we would both be in our like respective beds at home at night and like texting each other and being like, all right, man, like you start at the bottom of the DMs, I'll start at the top, and we'll meet in the middle, like clearing out the inbox each night. And it just moved fast from there. It was like, that was 2019 going into 2020, so that was like COVID time. And the crazy thing that happened is like, that was our only client. It was just living and breathing Chaco, and COVID hit, and they ended up having to furlough like the majority of their staff, like a lot of companies did. So their marketing team went from like 12 down to 2, and we somehow survived that cut. And we became everything. So at that point, we became graphic designers, marketers, strategists. We filmed you couldn't do any like photo or video shoots. So they were launching a new kids sandal, and we used my kids and my nieces in my backyard to film a full national like ad campaign to launch the sandals, because we couldn't do anywhere. They literally shipped me a kiddie pool to pull that off. But anyway, long story short, fast forward, we didn't have even a name on the business until like 8 months into it. It was just like 2 dudes working on Chaco. Then we finally got a couple other clients, put a name on it, moved into the garage that I bought, which is where the name came from, because it was a former Handcar wash garage. And then it just kind of started rolling from there. And now we're 4 years and some change in, and team of 9, and figuring it out a day at a time. But it's always just the funniest story, because I was not dreaming of getting into this business. I had dreams of someday having other people around me, and not just being a solo kind of preneur like I was for all of my career. But this exact like orientation was not in the plans. It was a mixture of opportunity and my, the classic entrepreneur's inability to say no to anything.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're talking to more and more people recently who have just become accidental entrepreneurs. And I feel like going through the pandemic was kind of that catalyst that pushed people into that direction. But I'm sure too, with some of these clients that stuck around during that time, I can imagine that your adaptability and being able to just make it work throughout that time spoke volumes to them. And I think that's a lesson that we can learn too in the corporate space as well, just as professionals, of how to be flexible, how to stay nimble, no matter what challenges and things come our way. But would love to hear a little bit more about the projects and some of the different brands. You mentioned Madcap and Chaco and doing all of these different things like graphic design and strategy. But today, what does that structure of the agency look like? What are you guys working on, and who are you working with right now?
Yeah. So at our core, we're a creative agency. We definitely like very much started in the social space. That's still a big cornerstone of what we do, but we're also doing bigger brand strategy now, kind of across the board, not just on social. Our kind of like unique differentiator has always been that we paired social strategy for mainly CPG brands, with the content that supports it, basically. So we've always had a creative team in-house. That's obviously always been like near and dear to me with my background. So that was kind of always our differentiators. Like, we essentially built these packages for these CPG brands where we were taking social completely off their plate. We were managing it. We were doing community management. We were doing, content, calendar planning, all of that stuff. But we were pairing that with monthly or quarterly, like actual asset deliverables. And that was actually like a lesson I learned from back when I was a wedding photographer. Like I said, for 13 years, for probably 10 years of that, I only had one package. It was a take it or leave it type of deal. But I had like my, pitch to people when I was working with them was always like, I've built this package to be exactly what I need to do exactly the type of job I want to do on your wedding day. It was this right amount of hours I needed to pull it off. It was the digital files. It was and so I kind of took some of that learning into this when we built out our package for social clients, was like, selfishly, these are the pieces that need to come together for us to do a good job running your social. I'm not super concerned with, in that space specifically in social, I'm not super concerned with what you need from like a deliverable standpoint. Like, you are trusting us to take on your social, you're trusting our expertise. This is like very much a collaboration and a partnership, especially with social. It's just a constant back and forth. But as far as like what we need to pull it off in the way that we know from our expertise to pull it off, like, I need X number of photo deliverables that I don't want to count on you to get that, from, especially in an age of low budgets and, longer lead times in creating content and assets. I need X number of design hours that our internal designer is doing, and I'm not bothering your designer with it and waiting for it in their queue. And then as time goes on, time went on and things changed, and Reels and TikTok came into play. Like, it was like, okay, and I need X number of short form videos that are produced by our team and aren't worried about who you're talking to on the side and all of that stuff. All of that stuff can like hedge into our overall strategy. But like, I built this, we built this thing to like hedge our bets against not running into any walls that like they're going to, ultimately screw us by not having their pieces in place. So to get back to your original question, we work with mainly CPG product-based brands to create kind of a holistic digital organic strategy. We don't do anything on the paid side. We've always been focused just specifically on organic. But our big calling card, especially on social, is like, it's always goes back to storytelling. And again, that comes back to my wedding photography career too, is like, it was always about story. And I think that's, a missing link from a lot of brands. And I think people are starting to wake up to that a lot more. But I mean, that's in our pitch with clients all the time. Is like, it's about story. Like, we're going to elevate aesthetics. We're going to make, everything come up to par with where we believe you need to be. But like, we're also going to be looking for all of those little red threads to pull on of, where are these consumer moments? How can we, not just say hello to this person and commend them for buying the product, but like, what else is there? What else are they, pull on that a little bit more. And that's why, again, going back to that like package, we like built that in a way that like we are set up for success to do that. And we, community management is like the biggest way we get there. Because that's just like, that's the front lines. That's the, we are making sure we're tapping in with every consumer, giving them a great experience. Like, the bar is just so unbelievably low to make a consumer feel heard and like excited. And we got to learn that firsthand with Chaco, that just has like such a fanatical fan base, which was like obviously just a really fun account to manage, because anybody that has them and has worn them for 20 years and worn them all around the world is like fanatical. So we got to learn that, and not every brand is like that, but like, community management has become such a like hallmark to what we do, because that's where we find those stories. That's where we pull that from, because like, we're in there, we're seeing what's happening. The brand has no idea what's, happening in their DMs and what their consumers are actually doing. But that's our closest way to see that, feel that, and then like go back to the brand and be like, hey, this, this person's doing this. This feels really exciting. Can we build something around that? Do we, can we get a little budget to, shoot a video around that or do something? So that's what gets us excited. And then that's just, long story short, has expanded into a lot of other service offerings, like go-to-market campaigns and brand strategy and, just ad hoc content and photo, video, design work. So
very cool. And you kind of have a hand in all of it, but you root it back within that story piece. And I think that's so just important for people to, extract out of their brand. I'm curious to hear, just from your perspective, maybe an example from the past or like a hypothetical example of, if somebody doesn't know where to start with pulling a story out of their brand, what would you say to them?
I think it goes, I was thinking about this kind of ahead of this conversation, and like, one of the like words I've come back to a lot is like, there's probably a better word for this, but like taste. I think like, is having somebody in the right seat that has taste and like vision to pull from that. Because I think you can toss anyone in the DMs and they're not gonna see that vision beyond just like, oh, this is a person saying, hey, I'm wearing your shoes, I'm very excited about them. But I think having somebody that's like in that seat correctly is really important. And so I think like, I think it's just being conversational. It's being human. You know, making marketing as human as possible is where that kind of magic lies. And I think that's how we found it. Like one of my favorite, you know, stories with Chaco that I've told 1.5 million times, and my team, you know, is very tired of hearing, was like back during those pandemic times, it was an exact example of this, of like a girl that, you know, we were seeing in the DMs all the time. We're like, why is this girl like mentioning us in her stories every single day? It's like, why, you know, what is the deal? Come to find out, you know, like I said, pulled on that red thread a little bit more. She was doing a self-inflicted "You're in Chacos" post. She was posting every single day her different outfits in her like 9 pairs of Chacos she owned. And, you know, this was just something she decided to do as like a New Year resolution. And like, obviously you can jump on board with that. You could do something cool. You could drop her a pair of shoes in the mail, like whatever. Like there's very easy ways to like, and low cost ways to like tap in on that and make somebody just feel valued beyond what we were already doing of just like saying what's up every time she, you know, did it. But we, you know, thought a little deeper on that, and we said like, okay, like, you know, we're in this very weird time. We'd already started to like mess around a little bit during that time with like, how can we elevate even like Zoom interviews? And we started doing a lot of stuff with that, where we were like interviewing consumers, but like turning that into like actual consumer facing like brand piece to like match with that weird, you know, phase of time. So we'd already kind of messed with like what that formula looked like. But Chaco is this really incredible thing in that they have a factory in Rockford where their headquarters is, that they do all of their custom sandals. They do like short run, like limited run sandals there. And then they also do all their repairs there. It's this like incredible facility. It wasn't enough storytelling around it at the time. And it's like made in the USA in that, you know, portion of what they do, which is really great. So there's just like a lot of really cool levers to pull on with that. But with this girl, we were like, okay, cool. Like we want to tell this story. She's this like fanatic. She loves them. She has so many pairs. So we actually like set up a Zoom interview with her. We were like, hey, we just want to talk to you more about like what you're doing. This is really cool. Turns out we like surprised her, and we actually sent me and another guy, just single camera, went out to the factory, and that was where we took her interview from. And we kind of surprised her, and we were like, hey, you know, Katie, great to meet you, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, by the way, we're at the Chaco factory right now, and like, we're going to let you build a custom pair of sandals over Zoom right this second. And we're just like filming that from the background, and we're literally walking her down the factory line being like, okay, what color buckle do you want? What color strap do you want? And then like, you know, final like kicker in that was like, hey, we actually already like pre-designed a custom printed back heel strap that says "You're in Chacos. Do you want to put that on there?" And she's like, yeah, like, you know, that kind of thing. But she, I mean, just beaming in this like Zoom interview, just like could not break the smile off of her face. Walked her through. Sandals got made literally right in front of her on us, just like walking a computer down. And it was like, again, like during 2020 when like consumer and just like human touch points were so hard to come by. So like to see, you know, the factory workers excited about it, her excited about it, like, and then to like drop those sandals in the mail right after that, and then, you know, get the earned media of like her sharing about that. We got to turn it into like a 2 or 3 minute like long form, you know, video that got really great interaction. And it was like the cost of it was, you know, our gas to drive to the west side of the state and some shoes from their you know, like from the brand standpoint, other than like, you know, the production costs, like this was nothing. And it was just because we were in there seeing this. Otherwise she would have just slipped through the cracks. You know, even with an internal, you know, person on social, you just can't do it all. And we just had the wherewithal to like look beyond that and be like, there's something else here. We can like pull on this in a pretty nimble way that isn't gonna break the bank, but is gonna like get some buy-in from this consumer for an even longer period of time.
Oh, that's so brilliant. And I'm sitting over here, and this might be really nerdy of me, but I like got chills when you were like, yeah, and we surprised her and walked her through the factory. I was like, that's such a great connection point. And I think people really identify with that. And even if it, you know, it's not something that directly touches them, they're like compassionate for this person who got this amazing experience with the brand, and they can kind of identify with that and say, okay, this brand really cares about its consumer. And that's an amazing story to bring to life. Something that we don't really talk a lot about, but it goes kind of hand in hand with storytelling, is elevating your brand through design and excellent design. That's something your team is, you know, phenomenal at. I'm just curious to hear from your side, how important is design in crafting, scroll stopping content? Could you kind of share your perspective on why design work is key in creating content that elevates your brand?
Yeah, I think it's huge because like we have like I guess just to give you a quick like breakdown of our creative team, we're super small obviously, but it's like I serve as creative director slash CEO. And then we have our social and strategy team is on kind of on one side, and then we have our creative team on the other side. Creative team right now has me. We have a short form, lead photographer, senior photographer, retoucher, and then our graphic designer. Um, and the great thing is like we're all here, we're all local, we're all like in our studio together quite a bit, so there's a lot of like pass back and forth of even like photo assets getting elevated with design, video assets getting elevated with like kind of there's just a lot of crossover there. But design specifically has been so important to us from the beginning, and Christina, our designer, is just like a freaking rock star and has been here since basically like a year and a half into this thing. And she is just so good at taking the like existing brand sandbox that they give us, right? Because we don't have total control. We can't do whatever we want. Brands already have kind of these walls set up, or they work with us to finish setting up the walls. And that's what we always say is like, give us the sandbox that we get to play in, and then we'll let it rip from there. And she is so excellent at that like production design aspect of that, of like, okay, one of our new clients we're working with this year is an outdoor brand called Rumple that makes these really awesome blankets, sacks that pack into like a camp sack for like van life. They're waterproof, they're incredible. But like, we're only like 2 months into working with them, and like already just spitting out these beautiful things that are based on a new direction that they want to go this year. So design is just huge, and I think like that goes back to, even from a social strategy standpoint, it goes back to like having a versatile mix too, because it's like, yes, reels perform best right now, but like that's not, number one, it's not like viable that's the only thing you're putting out, because you just can't like produce that much video that like only that's going out. But number two, it's just like holistically doesn't feel good that's if that's all you're spitting out. So like design is huge for us. We do a lot of like informational carousels that like just feel elevated to the brand and fit in really well with what else they're building, to like tell stories in a way that isn't just a caption. We do a lot of part of our initial like onboarding functionality is just like bringing all the design up to kind of standard too. So we're a lot of times in like one fell swoop, we're like making sure all profile pictures are oriented, cover photos, Instagram highlight icons. Like we're going through and kind of like auditing all of that off rip, and then letting a lot of that inform kind of what we do from a storytelling standpoint going beyond that. I think one of the best examples of like accounts that we run that we do that on is Cat Footwear, who is owned by the same parent company as Chaco. We've done a lot of work within the Wolverine worldwide portfolio, but Cat Footwear is really cool because it's obviously has a heritage of construction and 100+ year old company. So we get a lot of like really cool touch points where we can tell those stories, and those like really valuable stories, especially in today's day and age where the trades are so lacking for people and talent that can be in there. So we get that like great honor of like chasing after that and building kind of a brand around that with just like really awesome product to back it up, which is great. But from a design standpoint, I think that's one of our like favorite accounts where we shine, because we can do just like storytelling around any holiday or moment, or like Cesar Chavez. Like there's so much like things where we can just like extract like the brand elements, but like parlay that into like a story that's not even connected to the brand, but it's just like in the overall construction trades industry. So it's so important to us. It's like, if we did not have that, we would be sunk in just like being able to pull that off. And like, and if we had to rely on each of our clients separately and like their in-house, because most of our clients do have an in-house graphic designer, but like we'd never make it to their like priority queue, especially as an outside agency. So having our own thing to back us up and be able to move as quickly and nimbly as social does is just essential.
Do you have any advice to going back to kind of square one for brands going in and, developing, whether it's that brand identity from scratch or even looking to refine brand elements, if they're having a hard time figuring out what that should look like or what that brand essence should be visually, any tips for kind of shaping that and figuring out the direction for just overall identity and design?
Yeah, I mean, we do a fair amount of that, and I think like it comes back to like, I mean, as like cheesy as it sounds, like it really is like brand legacy. Like, what do you want to be, known for in the great ether 10 years from now? Um, and I think like I think it's twofold, right? Like I think there's building that the walls of the sandbox is huge, and that's a process, and that I think being intentional with who your consumers are, how you want to be talking to them, like what your mission and values are. Um, but then I think like especially as it relates to social, like also like letting your hair down a little bit is is okay, and having a little bit of fun with that, and knowing that like beyond 24 hours nobody's going to know this exists, remember this exists anyway, so like lean into that too. But I think like back to your original question, I think like how do you find that? I think it's like it's introspection, and it's exercise, and it's inspiration, and we do a lot of that work with brands, and especially looking outside of their industry is huge. Like don't get lost in what everybody else down the street making your same product is doing. Look outside of that to what else exists out there, what you're excited about by regardless of industry, I think is huge. So our job, and like what we always tell brands when we're working with them, whether it's social or brand identity or campaigns or whatever, is like our biggest thing we always say is like, you can never give us too much information. Like just throw everything on us, everything you're excited by, what you're chasing after, and then like let it be our job to like distill that down. And so even from a social planning standpoint, it's like just tell us as much as you humanly can. Don't keep us in the dark about what's coming down the pipeline, or what the brand is chasing after as an overall kind of like push. We will we'll take that information and do with it what we what we will, and kind of come back to you with the plan. But like we do a lot of that same exercise in like helping people identify who they are, is walking through that with them, and letting that be messy, and that being okay, because you don't have to show it to people until you're ready to show it to people. So
Yeah, absolutely. So if somebody's out there and they're listening to this and they're like, oh my gosh, I really want to work with Handcar, what does the process look like when a client comes to you for creative needs? How are you determining that scope of what they are looking for, from just their initial outreach saying, hey, I want to work with you? And then how does your team kind of execute on that?
yeah, that's a great question. And there's a couple different like ways people work with us. Our bread and butter, you might say, is like our full social strategy package, where we're managing, and we're also doing creative deliverables that go along with that. But outside of that, we also do as a full studio, we do a ton of just like ad hoc campaign work, across photo, video, brand identity, that kind of thing. Biggest thing is reaching out. We're it's very conversational. It's very we'll have some people that come to us with a completely baked out brief of like, hey, we need this, and we need we're going to shoot this commercial, and we need X number of cut downs, and they're just ready to roll, and we can just say like, okay, this is how much it costs, and this is when we can do it. And then there's others that come to us that are like, I have no idea what we need, but we do need something. And so that's when it's like, all right, let's have a 30-minute conversation, like talk about what that actually looks like, so that I can give you a proposal that actually plays into that, and puts you on the best path forward. And like I think the biggest thing like that we've done too, and this goes against kind of like agency model of old, which is like trying to hook people in for a long-term relationship. And we love that. Like most of our clients are super long-term and have been around us for 2+ years. But when we're like talking to somebody new too, is like we're also always down to just like start small. Like let's just do something, especially for those people that come to us that's don't really know what they want. They don't know if they need to do a full rebrand, or if they just want to kind of elevate social. They don't know if they want to continue managing social themselves, but want to like work with us for our like social playbook that we do, where we just kind of give you the plan and let you run with it. But our biggest thing we always say is like, let's not like him and haw on this for 6 months. If there's like something tiny, a photo shoot, you know, a bundle of assets that will like carry you forward for now, like let's just do it so you know how we work and know how we roll with it. We don't have to sign this big long-term, you know, contract right off rip. Like let's just do some work. And that's kind of, you know, it's the Midwesterner in us of just like wanting to get, you know, cracking on something. But it's also just like where, you know, where we get to shine and where we get to show, you know, how much we can do. In, you know, nimbleness is kind of our cornerstone here. So like how much we can do and how far we can kind of extrapolate that value with our team. And we just want to like show people that, you know, too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested to hear from your perspective, you know, why would a brand choose to work with a creative agency like Handcar versus, you know, trying to DIY, you know, whatever it is that they need in their creative work?
Yeah, I think it's like it's hard. It's something we run up against all the time, right? Especially like agency world is tricky in that way because um, working with brands, especially, they're constantly battling back and forth, and it depends on who leadership is, and when leadership switches, their strategy will completely change. But it's like brands are constantly going back and forth of like, is it in house? Is it, you know, agency? Is it, you know, whatever? And like sometimes at no fault of, you know, the agencies, it's just they bring it back in house because that's what, you know, the new leadership wanted, and you're kind of just like stuck there, kind of you know, bummed out of like everybody had a great time, this worked out really well, but like we want this in house. Um, so I think like the constant battle of that and like why I think why like the agency model still has so much value is like is the shared resource of just so many more people for the cost of what, you know, one person in house would be. With social especially, it's just, you know, it's the constant, you know, conversation out there in LinkedIn world is especially is like, you know, social media managers are wearing so many different hats. They're expected to be a content creator and a calendar planner and a copywriter, and like, you know, obviously like we still battle some of that even internally here of like our, you know, strategists here is like there's still some of that like we try and go up against of like you do need people to be very versatile and kind of a pocket knife, but we try and like, you know, put a cap on that as much as we can while still, you know, doing an amazing job. But I think what brands run into when they bring it in house is it's just like it's your resources are depleted so quickly because it's just one person. They and finding that person that is good at all of those things is just it's so much to ask. And I think like and the biggest thing that like we say too, and again why we like have creative, you know, outside of their internal structure is like we can just get a lot more done. We're just not stuck in the corporate kind of rigmarole of meetings and all of that. Like we can just kind of like we always using the analogy of like letting us run the ball down the field while you go and focus on everything else. Like just give us what's going on, you know, we tell you what's going on, we're briefing kind of both ways, but let us run with it while you go and handle, you know, the rest of the stuff of like actually getting product in consumers' hands. So I think that's like where the advantage is like you get, you know, tap into percentages of, you know, the 9 of us plus freelancers, or have one person that then you're trying to like ad hoc each project and do each shoot. And, you know, they're still doing a lot of that, but like let us make that lift as much as humanly possible as a multi kind of faceted team, and just like the benefit of multiple different points of view. You know, we have an incredible team here that like we always laugh that like we just have such varying and odd backgrounds. We've kind of built this ragtag team of people that aren't you know, typical marketers. We have, you know, somebody that worked in coffee for 15 years. We have somebody that was a pastor. We have somebody that was, you know, a behavioral therapist. Like all this crazy stuff that has now come into like, you know, I got to kind of extrapolate those people out of that, not take them out of that, but like something new and exciting for them that like pulled out pieces of them that they didn't know they had. And it just gives us this incredible point of view that like spans beyond traditional marketing again versus like just the one person you've got that like is kind of shouting into an abyss. We've got a, you know, room of 10 people that are able to shout, you know, across the desk instead.
Yeah, and I think to your point too, there's benefits of being super close to the brand, but also that becomes a roadblock at the same time. So having people who are kind of outside of that, not as close to it, who can kind of expand their horizons and their thinking process, I think is also super beneficial of working with an agency.
Yeah, and I think
So
we just get we get a ton of like shared learning from even just
yeah,
our other clients too, of like, hey, this worked
exactly.
really well over here. How can we parlay this to this brand? Like there's a lot of that too, which really comes in handy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jesse, this has been awesome. As we close out, we have to ask one of our favorite questions, of course, tying in career as we always do here on the show, but would love to know, what do you know now that you wish you knew early on in your career?
Yeah, I think like that's a great question, and I like appreciate that introspection. I struggle with one of my struggles is celebrating the wins and like feeling excited about where we are, and that's I think that's a lot of like entrepreneur struggles too. But it was cool to kind of like think on this question a little bit, and I think like, and I say this a lot to our team too, is like there is so much value in relationships and playing the long game. And I don't mean that from a standpoint of like I'm constantly just like, seeing seeing who I'm talking to and how I'm going to make that angle later. Because I'm not like, I'm not big networking guy. I'm an introverted extrovert in a lot of ways. So like if I'm in a crowd of people at a cocktail hour or something, like I'm not just gonna walk up to a group of people and like start a conversation. I kind of slip into the shadows and scroll my phone or something. But um, I think the value that I saw, and like again, going back to my wedding career, is like relationships are everything. And like this entire business is thanks to making good on relationships prior. Like I said, this was a friend that I shot photo campaigns with that then turned into this and now turned into a big team. Um, and almost all of our clients since then have been a friend or a friend of a friend, or we did previous work here and that brand manager moved to a different company, and then they like brought us back in there. The director of marketing at Rumple that we just started working with, this is now the fourth brand we've worked on with him, which just like I think there's just so much value in doing what you say you're going to do and following up and answering emails, and that was always the thing I used to say when I shot weddings. Is like people would ask me like, you know, and I would always just be honest, and I'd be like, I'm not the best photographer in the world. I'm not the most artistic photographer in the world, but like I answer an email and I deliver things when I say I'm going to, and they look beautiful, and I take my job really seriously. And I've like parlayed that into this, where it's like we're just going to do what we said we're going to do, and we're going to elevate it and blow it out of the water. And we're going to do it fairly and kindly, and kind of carry ourselves with that. And I think like that has just made our relationship so strong that like even as people move, and especially in the marketing world, like people just jump ship all the time. So like that's just another, for us especially, it's just another opportunity as they move on to their next gig. If we were good to them in their previous gig, especially like people in the director of marketing position, like how it is. Like as soon as they come in, they want to swap everything for their relationships and their past things, and we get to be the benefactor of that. We're also also have to have the flip side of that that when it happens with the companies we're working with too. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing like that I've just learned over time, and that I always say to my team is like just play the long game. Like if it's a not right now, it's a no worries. We don't need to be annoying about it. We don't have to like be intentional about follow-ups and keeping relationships alive. But like I'm never going to hound somebody to work with us. It either works or it doesn't. And there's so many times that it's 2 years later and they come back, and because that relationship was handled correctly, it turns into something.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I always say that relationship is at the core of literally everything in marketing,
Yep.
and everything in life, honestly. And so what I'm hearing you say too is you're not one of those people on LinkedIn who's messaging all these people over and over and over again, especially when they say no, like some of these salespeople can be. So I think just handling those relationships, in an appropriate and, just human way is
Yeah.
so essential and so important. One thing that I like to talk about too is I feel like I go through my career or go through my life and I'm like collecting my people along the way to
Yep.
just like have in my back pocket to like bring out when I need somebody who has that expertise. And one of those people is my really close friend, Amy. She's a photographer as well. And she has worked on a couple brand projects with me too. And we talk all the time about, marketing, life, these different things and projects we want to work on together. And we're out here making it happen. So I love to hear that that's something that you do as well. Well, I'm curious to know where everyone can find you, follow along with what you're up to now, and, get in touch if they'd like to work with you.
Yeah. Me personally, all of my accounts are just at Jesse David Green, Instagram and the like. And then for the company, everything is at handcar.co. That's both our website and our Instagram handle. Get to see a little bit behind the scenes of what we're doing in our studio here in Detroit. Tap in and work with us, or just reach out and say what's up. That's again, relationships are everything. So let's just chat.
Super good. We'll link everything in the show notes for people to find you there. But thanks again for joining us. This has been so good.
Thank you guys. This was so fun. I really appreciate it. Love everything you're building, and appreciate you, just having these conversations with people. It's really awesome.
We are so excited to share that our first ever free marketing happy hour digital resource is now available. Download the Dream Career Game Plan today at marketinghappyhr.com/freebie. That's marketinghappyhr.com/freebie. This 5-step workbook will guide you through defining your goals, building your network, diversifying your skills, influencing where you're at, and investing in your growth. Cassie and I created this resource with marketing careers in mind, but the framework can be applied to any industry. Our hope is that this workbook will help you truly elevate your career, whether you're in the market for a new position or just looking to make your mark in your current organization. No matter where this resource finds you, we are cheering you on every step of the way. So go check it out at marketinghappyhr.com/freebie to download and make your career dreams come true.